Hi everybody, Matt Lawton here, and this is the Astrological Winds channel. Going to take a look at the astrological weather report for the week of April 10th through 16th, and this is a week of Venus. Mainly, not a lot of stuff going on, but mainly focused around Venus. Venus changing signs, going into Gemini, and making a few aspects. So it's going to be a week that we're mainly focused on relationships and money and our own creativity. So get into that in a minute, but just for a sec, wanted to let you all know the Astrological Winds channel is a free service that I offer every week on YouTube as a video blog. And therefore, if you have a YouTube account, please become a follower and turn on your notifications. And since it is a free service, please pass the link on to somebody else for me. It's the best way for it to continue to grow. And remember also, it is a podcast, so it's also available on just audio format on different podcasts, and all you got to do is go on to one of your favorite podcasts. It's distributed through Buzzsprout to about 20 different ones. Just look up Astrological Winds channel and you should be able to tap into audio. And remember, like I said, free service, so pass it on to someone else. Please do that. And the best other way you guys can support me, and maybe some of you haven't heard this before because I don't get to again. Occasionally I have people ask me about it, and I'm like, oh, I mention it every blog, is that I am a professional astrologer, and I do give professional readings. I've been doing that for over 20 years. So if you need some kind of professional astrology service, please get in touch with me. My email is matthuE823@gmail.com. That's matthuE823@gmail.com. And one thing I try to remember to mention every week, especially for you newer people who haven't been following the blog for a while yet, if your interest in astrology is just that and you don't know a lot about it, don't get caught up on the astrological terms that I'm expressing. You want to listen to the interpretations in between. That's the important thing to know. That's the wisdom and knowledge of having the energy of this week and knowing, how to, most work with that in a harmonious way. So, don't get caught up on me saying, oh, Venus and Gemini, and you're thinking, well, what the heck does he mean? And then you're missing the interpretation, which is really the more important thing to hear. But there are a lot of people who are into astrology who listen to the blog, and they do like to hear the astrological reasoning behind it. So that I just want to get that through. Oh, and then one other thing I want to mention too before I forget, because I managed to forget a lot of times astronomical notes. This is the best week to spot Mercury in the evening sky. It's Venus is very bright in the evening sky, and I'm sure if you look at the sky, you've been noticing at sunset, Venus is very, very bright in the western sky, and it's been staying up relatively late at night because she's high on the horizon. But below her is Mercury as it gets darker. And it's one of the best times of the year to see Mercury. Mercury comes and goes, and we don't get a chance to see Mercury nearly as much as the other four visible planets. So a really good chance this week to go out there and wait until it's getting darker, because Mercury is nowhere near as bright as Venus or Sirius or any of the brighter stars even. So you really need to wait, look on that western horizon. It's kind of below Venus, and it'll be a little bit, it's not exactly below, it's going to be a little bit off, and so you're going to have to spot it. A lot of times it's good to get one of the apps that'll tell you exactly where it is too. There's some good ones out there. So anyway, it's a Venus week. Speaking of Venus, it's a Venus week, and that all starts today, Monday. Actually, kind of tonight, overnight, really. Venus goes into Gemini, and so leaves Taurus, where she's in rulership, and goes into Gemini. And Venus, doesn't mind Gemini either. It actually gets the goddess out. It extroverts her. She really gets into wanting to make many different kinds of connections. So let's really go out and socialize and take in lots and get a lot of input from different people, and can really go from one thing to another like a butterfly, very on a very kind of a more superficial Venus than Taurus, not settled in, not nearly as emotional. Venus is the Venus that is wanting to connect on the creative intellectual level. So it's very witty and humorous and fun loving, and kind of like I said, have that extroverted kind of push, really has an outgoing thing, and is really into connecting with people who are sharing a lot of the ideas that you're into at this point. So that really gets the mind going and gets us wanting to go out there and make those kinds of connections. Now, also, Venus does rule creativity. So when it goes into Gemini, that creativity goes into words, being very creative with words. It's like a poetic energy, a lyrical kind of energy, storytelling energy, creative writing kind of energy, even creative humor, things like that, because it's definitely got that wittiness to it that Gemini has, and can make connections very fun loving. So using words in those ways creatively too is part of the energy of Venus and Gemini. And then the other thing is, Venus does, have a lot to do with our money. And when it's in Gemini, I think at times it can be a little bit foolish with our money. It's a time to be like where we can kind of, be inconsistent with our money and stuff, and it's probably not the best time to be like that. So it's something we may want to look at to kind of keep an eye on ourselves if we're being kind of undisciplined with our money, maybe spending more than we should be in a time when we should be a little bit more careful with it, things like that. So as soon as Venus goes into Gemini overnight tonight, it, of course, goes to the first degree of Gemini, and that means it immediately goes into a trine with Pluto, which just went into Aquarius, if you'll remember, a couple weeks back. So, we're getting their air sign, and at a very important degree. So Venus trine Pluto brings a lot of emotional depth and passion up into our relationships, especially the relationships of people who we trust, who we're intimate or deep with, people, who are connected with on almost a family kind of level, people we consider who are so tight with us, either family blood or family in the sense of people who are so intimate and close to us that they are considered family. And of course, a lot of times with Venus and Pluto, that's a very sexual energy too. It's a very good energy for deepening romantic relationships, bringing them to another level. Venus trining Pluto is wanting to take relationships to a new level. There's a willingness. This is not a fight. This is not a coercion. This is passion moving it. This is like the energy of passion pushing behind and wanting to look at things on a new level and getting regenerative out of that, getting self-growth for both parties out of that through the lens of relationship. So it's very, very willing to go to these deeper levels with people, to take it to the next step. And also very, very passionate energy for creating artistic manifestations of how we're feeling, inspired, right now. So like really, getting output that can be like a fervor of energy in a creative outlet for whatever your creative outlet is. It's this, there's a depth and a passion that like really comes through. So when you think of like some of the great artists of whatever kind of art, just like when they're at the height of their creative work, that's like this Venus Pluto energy. It's like this very like almost obsessed creative drive of putting out what you want to put out. And once again, just this is another thing of saying, look, this can help with the Gemini way of being a little bit unstable and reliable about finances, where the Venus Pluto can really take a deep look at where your financial situation is at and understand where you should and should not be putting your money. So the same day, Tuesday, tomorrow, very interesting. One of the other big things going on this week, and really for me, I'll say really the main thing that's non-Venus related, really the only other big thing that's non-Venus related tomorrow is the annual conjunction of the sun to Jupiter. So the sun is conjunct Jupiter in Aries tomorrow, and that is super positive energy as far as attitude goes. It's this very optimistic energy. It wants to take in more. It wants to grow somehow. And one of the best ways to use Sun conjunct Jupiter is to actually start a new course of study into something that you already have the base foundational information and knowledge that you need in order to do the next course of study. So secondary kind of knowledge and stuff that you're really into, because there's a drive right now to want to take in more. And there's this very tolerant attitude that we have under Sun Jupiter. It's willing to be exposed to other ideas that come from places outside of ourselves, or even outside of our general environment or surroundings or culture or social or class or whatever other labels we put on ourselves. That we can get outside that now and get information that expands our knowledge base and widens our viewpoints and upgrades our philosophical way of looking at life and things, and even and even shifts our values to become more wide and more tolerant. And so that's and then the other thing about the Sun Jupiter, when we're in that situation where we have the energy of this expansion and wanting that, is to actually learn directly from experience. That's the other thing that Sun Jupiter, and in Aries especially, Aries is such like an initiator, go-getter for the self sign, and it learns a lot on the adventures that it's taking. So the Sun Jupiter conjunction in Aries is going to give us that, push to want to go out and experience and do things more. And we learn from that. That's what we learn from. And it's interesting too, with some of the little negative things that can fall in with Sun Jupiter and in Aries. We have to be a little bit more particularly noticing of this stuff, is that what that positive optimistic energy, and it's feeding back and it's making you feel good. So it's inflationary. It starts to inflate ourselves, our like ego. So we have to be careful about falling into like the trap of like self-righteousness, or even like arrogance about like the way we're doing things. And then the other thing too is over-promising, like falling into the trap of like taking on too much We want to grow and expand so much that we get this zesty, open attitude that's, and that's literally like, overcommits basically, time wise or resource wise or some other way, and then can like look almost irresponsible. But what's interesting about that is that the Sun Jupiter conjunction is so optimistic in the energy behind it that it can carry the day anyway. So it can be a little bit sloppy. It can be a little bit careless and undisciplined at times, but it'll push through a lot of these issues, just even if they start to come up because of this like attitude. And so that's, we just have to we can put certain people off when we get that kind of self-righteous tone to things, or can't actually come through with everything that we promised. So, and then there's a shift with Venus coming. We go back to Venus now at the end of the week. There's a big shift from that Gemini Pluto energy on Friday when it squares Saturn. And at the same time, the Sun again, the only other planet really, has another conjunction with Eris. And Eris is like a body that represents like the goddess of change, chaos, like upsetting quick changes, almost like Uranus energy on steroids, when she gets involved. So so Venus squaring Saturn and the Sun conjuncting Eris on the same day, and it would seem to me that what will most likely play out on at the end of the week is there'll be some kind of like upsetting kind of changes that come in, most likely through relationships with other people, that upsets the way we were going to do things, And what that does is it forces us into a Venus-Saturn square situation of really having to evaluate the relationships that we're in and the reality of each one. And in particular, the ones that are bringing in this upsetting energy, this energy that's causing a lot of change or upset in our lives. So with the Venus square Saturn, we're going to get into a very sober, realistic mood about the way relationships are. We're going to ground out. We're going to stabilize. We're going to get stoic. We're going to hold a lot of the emotion of what we're really feeling about people inside ourselves rather than expressing it. And what we're actually doing is we're doing an internal reevaluation of anybody who we are sensing that's restricting us in any way that we're in a relationship with, and really evaluating that relationship and its value to us. Is it worth what we're putting in versus what we're getting out? Is there too much chaos and change? Is there too much restriction? And so this is an aspect where many times we separate too from certain relationships. We literally have to admit to ourselves in a very sober and stoic way that this relationship is not reliable, it's not stable, and it creates a lot of chaos in our lives. And therefore, first of all, accept that reality ourselves. That's the lesson for ourselves. And the second thing is, at that point, we now have evaluated that relationship and the reality of that relationship, and where do we want to take it from there? Is there a point there, it goes from a point of just like, can we be more real and grounded and sober with these people and get the reaction that we need from them in our reality, to the other swinging point of, no, I need to actually separate myself from certain relationships that are actually too restrictive to me. So that's what we're really going to be doing, and it's mainly a process we're going to be doing inside. This is not going to be like the outer like, oh, I'm going to go and tell everybody what I'm thinking. This is, and in actuality, if you are in or really feeling that about a relationship or certain relationships, it's a good weekend to take some time for yourself alone and really, look at it, look at it for a little bit. But the other thing I'm thinking too is, especially once again with Venus being the ruler of the money and finances and the markets and stuff, and in Gemini, kind of back and forth, and we know the economy is not great, and we have Sun conjunct Eris this week. This Friday, could be one of those trigger days in the market where you could see something jump, and I would think down would be the way it would be going with the Venus Saturn. So that's kind of something that's interesting to look at too. And then also one other thing that day that's a little bit minor, but probably feeds some of this, is the Neptune is opposite the asteroid Pallas Athene that day, and that can actually bring confusion up in relationships too, and so that might be part of that Venus Saturn too, where you're just not like feeling like you are completely in the right zone with people, that their influence may not be the best thing for you, or their belief systems may not be the best thing for you, and that that it almost like requires blind faith. And that Venus Saturn is just like, no, I need something more reliable than that. And the last thing I want to mention too is another thing with Venus. On Sunday, Venus is semi-square both Jupiter and Pallas. So Venus is on the midpoint of Jupiter and Pallas. And that, I think, can give us the ability to channel our creative energy really well, especially our mental creative energy. I think this is going to stimulate the Venus and Gemini side. It's going to want to go out and connect with other people who share the same creative ideas as us. And a lot of this with Jupiter will probably circle around certain social movements, justice, equality, those kind of issues, those kind of things, people with the shared ideals, making very potent connections and feeling really, getting a lot out of that, feeling really good about it, So very interesting week for Venus, and so yeah, that's about it for this week, and so it's just a lot of shifting going on there. But definitely a lot of that extroverted energy. But that Venus Saturn is going to have us really evaluate things too in a sober way too. But there's a lot of like extroverted pushing out energy that goes on before that this week. And I think it'll take us to a point where we're like, okay, now with this new information we have, let me evaluate the reality of certain relationships and where I want to put my energy and time. Now, next week is a big week, you guys. Really, really big shifts going on. We're going to get that eclipse coming up, the solar eclipse, and the new moon, and then Mercury going retrograde the very next day. As I talked about it a little bit in the monthly, it's the huge shift we're going to go into next week, and could lead to a lot of shifts in our personal lives, but also some big shifts on the world stage too. So definitely make sure you check out next week. But that's what I got for this week. So this is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel. It's a video blog I do for free every week on YouTube. So if you have a YouTube account, please become a follower and turn on your notifications, and you'll know automatically whenever I post the blog. And since it's a free service, the best way you guys can pay me back is, as soon as you get off, is to pass the link on to somebody else in your contact list. Half the world believes in astrology now. It doesn't have this stigma that it had in the past. So, please help me get the blog to grow. And of course, like I said before, the other great way to help me out is to get a reading. I am a professional astrologer. I've been doing readings for over 20 years. I was trained for 7 years with professional classes. So it's something that I do regularly. So if you've never had your natal chart, that is your birth chart, done by a professional astrologer, not by someone who's read a book and is your friend, or some kind of online thing. It's a completely different experience what you'll get. I highly recommend doing that for yourself. And also predictive readings, which is your own little weather report for each year. And I recommend getting them right around your birthday. Great birthday present to yourself. It's basically the same thing I do for the weekly, but I do it for you for a year, so you know the energy that you're working with that year, the challenges and the stuff that can help you in making decisions on how to work with those challenges. Also, relationship readings for people who've just gotten together and want to see the connection they have, or people who've been together for a while and want to see how the relationship entity is functioning. Children's readings for those who have children and looking for better ways to connect and understand their child, and also the first 20 years, the major events of their lives, things that, we can look at that. Relocation, astrocartography for people looking to move somewhere. We can look at your chart and see how that's going to affect, your chart and different parts of your life that may become more into focus in those places. Or if you're looking to move to places where, there's power spots for you in different parts of the world that, certain kinds of energy come in and manifest more. We can look at that kind of energy. Fixed star readings for people who have already got a really good grip on their natal chart and the way that functions. This is a deeper level of astrology that really shows a lot of the purpose of why you're here. So that's a really interesting level of astrology to get to. Also do election charts if you have some big important event coming up. Like I always say, weddings or starting a business are two great examples. Why not get the timing as best as you can? It's available there for you. You can really get the energy to work so much more harmoniously when you set up the right time to start an event. And then also horary questions. If you have some burning question you can't seem to get an answer to or make a decision about, it's very emotional for you, it's been going on a long time, sometimes we can look at a chart and will give us an idea of what that answer is for you. So also have classes available for people who are looking to learn beginner astrology classes. They're $25 a class, or $20 if you're a student, or you can get the first 5 for $100. They're available on Dropbox. And then also, if you have a group that's looking for a class or a lecture or a question and answer session or mini readings or some kind of entertainment for your event, I am also available for those things. All those things, the best way to get me right now is through my email, matthue823@gmail.com. That's matthue823@gmail.com. You can leave a comment in the comments sections where the blog is posted, but remember, there's a lot of comments that come and go in the social world, so sometimes it might not get picked up or noticed right away. So it's better to email me if you can. I should get my website back up relatively soon, which will be another way that you'll be able to get me. But right now, that's the best way. matthue823@gmail.com. All right, get ready. It's good for some shifts in relationships this week, and next week, really some big shifts. So you don't want to miss next week's blog. And I will see you all then.